That's it. Oh, but this is my brain alone. I showed you guys in a recent video how I was reusing the old Enermax Lictech 240. Lictech. Insert your own joke there, there's plenty. I experienced something that I think might shed some light on some things for a lot of people when it comes to really odd errors and crashes and things. So today we're going to show you guys, I guess, just how picky hardware can be.
We interrupt this video to bring you a special message from iFixit. No, we interrupt this interruption with this interruption about new stuff from iFixit. Wish you had a new graphics card, but inventory sucks? Fix the inventory problems with iFixit. Whoa, don't drop it. Can't fix that with iFixit. Just kidding, yes you can. Wish you could take iFixit with you anywhere, but your pockets aren't big enough? Introducing the new More
and the new Minnow.
Take them with you anywhere. So get iFixit for your loved ones, or just get them for yourself.
I interrupt this video to give you a very important message. Construction is fully underway out here. But in the haste of getting our last video done and so they can get in here and get started, I forgot to give you guys a code. And trust me, about 50,000 of you have let me know that. So I'm giving you two codes today. The first code is NVIDIA is overpriced. N-V-I-D-I-A, not I-N. People like to spell NVIDIA wrong. N-V-I-D-I-A-I-S-O-V-E-R-P-R-I-C-E-D. NVIDIA is overpriced. I mean, if you need help spelling that, I'm sorry. The other one is Jay's Clickbait. J-A-Y-Z-C-L-I-C-K-B-A-I-T. Let me now get you back to our regularly scheduled program before this mess started.
But you won't believe number 5.
Oh, you won't believe next week's, the next video's code. The Enermax Lictech 240 came out in, I'm curious now, what does the printing of the manual say? Because I can't remember the exact year. I had a 2-year warranty, so I think we're out of 2013.
You're always 7 years on.
So I said in that previous video that when I got it, it was a couple years old, like in terms of being around at that time, and I got it in 2016, so clearly it had already been out 3 years. 2013, 9 years old. First of all, spoiler, if you haven't seen that last video, it cools our 10900K fantastically. The sublamination didn't even happen in this setup. Best AIO in my opinion that was ever made. I don't know if they made a 360 version of it. I wish I had one. The 240 is able to core 10900K overclocked 502 gigahertz at 1.45 volts, no problem whatsoever. But again, as I said, installing it led to some challenges. So with the hardware and stuff that it comes with, you know, it comes with brackets and stuff for AMD's AM3 Plus, which would still work on a lot of AM4 boards because they have the holes and provisions for AM3 and AM4. It's got the 2011 hold down stuff. And then it has the hardware that's on there now, which was designed for the 11XX sockets. Well, you know, you had 1150, you had 1150, 1151, 1200. Now we're at LGA 1700. Yeah, 1156, I think there was. There's tons. There's even a socket 13 something, I think. I can't recall. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, Intel every single generation likes to revise the socket slightly. All the way from LGA 775 up until now, the perimeter hole distances have stayed within a few millimeters of each other. And most have brackets, similar to this one, that have a little slidey mabob. You see it on the back, you can see it slides in and out to expand the mounting bracket to fit with various Intel mounts. This one was listed as working all the way up to LGA 2011, right, I already said that. AMD, right, FM, FM2, AM2, AM3, and then, oh yeah, AMD, AM2, AM2 Plus, AM3, AM3 Plus, FM1, FM2, FM2 Plus. For Intel, LGA 775, 1150, 1155, 1156, 1366 in 2011. So I was right when I said there was a 13. No mention, obviously, of LGA 1151. Obviously, 1151, 1150, and 1155 are all in the same size there. What this doesn't tell you is the newer sockets, although they have the same basic size and perimeter, the Z-axis height is different amongst all of those. So that's why this particular one, if you look down inside here, has a spring-loaded mechanism. That way it's designed to always push pressure down and stop high enough so the spring is pushing it down. That's proper for that era. It's the same reason why if you have a modern LGA 1700 12th gen Intel, even though the installation brackets look identical from the previous 11th gen and 10th gen CPU coolers, the Z-axis on 1700 is taller. So if you use the lower hardware and you go tightening it down, you're gonna put way too much socket pressure on the CPU. And then you end up having a problem. See, this is something that AMD thought of when it came to Threadripper. And it's the reason why they give you a clicking torque wrench with the CPU and give you a very specific order at which to tighten things down. If you don't use that socket, or that socket wrench, that torque wrench, you can cause temporary or permanent damage of your CPU and or motherboard. So what I experienced here, and I'm just showing you this is working now with 2 sticks of RAM, and I don't know why IQ turned off, the RAM stopped lighting up, but that doesn't matter. It's working, it's fine. Now if I go ahead and shut it down, when I first did this video, come on, shut down. It turned on, everything was great, everything was fine. Went and took a dump, 10, 15, 20 minutes of looking at Instagram Reels later. I came back out and I noticed my system was locked up, like completely locked up. Reset button did nothing. I had to do the hard reset of holding down the power button. When I powered it down, and you notice I'm tightening this bracket now, when I powered it back up, I was getting a code 55. And code 55 is no memory detected. And I thought that was odd. So now that I've tightened this down, I want to see now if I can make that error come back again, because what I believe happened here was because this has a slightly higher Z-axis, I keep saying axis versus back then, I believe that we are squeezing the socket tight and we are causing either pins to bridge and or pins to maybe lift off because of potential bending. So let's see if we get a code 55 here. Doesn't look like we're going to, but it doesn't mean we're not going to either by letting it try and boot itself up and then see if it'll lock up in the system. Because what I was dealing with here, this RAM channel, the one closest to the CPU, if I took it out, code 55 would no longer persist. And I did the normal things, clear CMOS, all that. Taking this RAM stick out, the code would stop, it would post, and I'd be fine. If I put that RAM stick back in, code 55 would pop back up on the motherboard. So that led me to think, oh, do I have a bad stick of RAM? Did it somehow randomly go bad on me? Right now everything seems to be working, of course, because we're making a video. That's fine. Memory, no, 32 gigs of RAM, it's all there. Thinking that the RAM stick might have been bad, I put the RAM stick in the slot A, because this is a 2-channel, even though it's 4 DIMM slots, it's dual channel, A and B. I put it in slot A, and it posted. So I now know that that RAM stick wasn't bad. I put the other RAM stick in the closest to the CPU slot, same. Why'd the shutting down stop? Okay, it's doing the thing, yay! It's like weirdness, right? It's stuck, like shutting. Okay, perfect. Let me restart it now and see what happens. So my point was, when the cooler was tightened all the way down, it's now my assumption that it is somehow causing a pin issue, where the pins are now, maybe one is touching, maybe one is not touching, here, maybe one is barely touching to where as temperature heats up in the CPU, you start to have heat expansion, just like anything else. Remember the pins, LGA pins, or land grid array, that are on the motherboard are those springy, hook-looking pins. And the CPU pushes down against those pins and it makes a contact, right? So if the CPU is in like a weird, crazy angle and it's being pushed too hard, the pin can also potentially touch a neighboring pin or not touch at all because it lifted up on one side. And I started to say that one of the things that Threadripper taught us about that was the fact that that's why they're very adamant about tightening down the socket, which is a Torx head, in a very specific order. So now I'm trying to see if I can't get this problem to come back again. Let's see if shutdown fails again. But it got me thinking, like, I wonder how many people that will write me messages and go, I get the weirdest, randomest blue screens. They're like, I've changed my RAM, I've changed my drive, I've changed everything. But if they're just putting it all back together with the same cooler that's maybe been repurposed and or isn't, that time it shut down, isn't using the right hardware and you're hulking it down, are you causing yourself a problem? So now I'm gonna like legitimately tighten this even more, just to see if I can get the problem to persist. If I were smart, what I would have done is I would have stopped the video I was making and made the video about this while the error was happening, just to be able to show you guys in real time what the code 55 was. But I don't think it's going to happen right now because code 55 was popping up like nearly immediately. But now it's working just fine, of course. It's like when your car is doing a noise, you take it to the mechanic and the noise stops, takes it for a test drive, can't figure out what's wrong, says, well, everything seems to be working. You drive home, the noise starts back, you turn around, go back to the mechanic, and it stops right as you pull in again. It's just like that. But yeah, what I ended up doing and how I ended up getting through the test for that previous video was I just loosened up the screws a little, which to be honest too, could potentially have hurt the cooling a little bit if I don't have the tension just right. Because the hardware is spec'd for the sockets that are specifically listed. So this video is really more of a PSA to let you know, like if you're reusing hardware, like an older thing that you've just gone through a few builds with and you're like, oh, hey, look, the brackets line up, let's just use it. You could very well absolutely be causing yourself a problem. And look, now we have no RAM lighting again. Hey, it worked. Look, we have no mouse. It's completely locked up. Okay, now that this has happened, which is basically reminiscent of what happened the last time, look, I got nothing. Now, reset, nothing. Now it should come back up potentially with the code 55 error. Nope, it's posting. But is it gonna post and lock up again? See, do you understand why this could be extremely frustrating and difficult for somebody without a lot of experience with hardware to try and figure out these types of problems when everything is working fine and then you just can't explain why suddenly something stops working? Because look, now it's working just fine. So if I were, and then the RAM just turned off again in terms of the lighting. Oh, there it goes. Look, lockup. So here's the thing, if you were new to computers, where would you start? You'd be like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening here. Would your first thought be to loosen up your AIO? Probably not. Probably not. You might think it's your CPU and you might swap it with another one, and then you might take the cooler off, put on the new CPU, and then crank it back down with the force of Hulk again. Yeah, nothing. So I am going to power cycle. And I want to see if I can get that code 55 to come up. Because code 55, like I said, that was specifically to memory. And the reason why it's giving a memory error, at least it did that time, see, I loosened it up and retightened it. So it doesn't mean the same pins that were causing me a problem are going to cause a problem. It could be different pins. But at least the first time I did this, the pins that were, now it's going to do disk check because it knows that it keeps crashing. The pins that were causing a problem were memory related. So it doesn't mean they're memory related this time. Does that make sense? It's not always going to be, and the order which I tighten them down is going to torque it in a different way, so it might be completely different pins, which is why I'm getting such random behavior. One of the things that I had done is I left it in the BIOS for a while to see if it would lock up there, because I started thinking maybe the cooler pump was dead or something and was turning off and overheating. That wasn't the case. It also was not locking up in BIOS, only in Windows. And that could have something to do with just the way Windows accesses the memory, I'm not sure. But again, this may not even be a memory issue on this one. So this is the kind of stuff that can lead to craziness. Let me do a Cinebench run right now. I'm curious as to if we would even pass. But the intermittentness, is that a word? Intermittentness? If it wasn't a word, it is now. The intermittentness is what leads to the mystery of trying to solve problems like this. I want it to crash or give me a problem one more time so I can show you by loosening up my cooler, they will all go away. And this is a small CPU. By small, I mean it's the small substrate before the 12th gen went to a much bigger one. The bigger the substrate, the more likelihood this can happen, which is also why with the retention system of 12th gen and the potential bending of the CPU causes a problem because then it starts lifting and not touching pins in areas where it's supposed to. But you guys already saw, we had a shutdown fail, like a pause on shutdown. It's like if someone were to tell me my system locked up when I tried to shut it down, I would think you might have a driver issue. Something to do with like parking the driver. Being an issue, but that time it shut down just fine. You saw we had a lockup in the middle of our desktop. Interestingly enough, that I cannot get a particular postcode problem, which kind of even leads to the mystery of it all. Like postcode 55 is what led me directly to go, something's up with the memory, swapping the memory out and going, memory's fine, let's try the CPU cooler. And then that was my first thought. Because of my experience, I knew like this cooler was not intended for this era. This era obviously is years and years, almost a decade newer than this. So there had to be something with that. It's all working at the moment, but I haven't changed anything, and obviously I wouldn't trust it. So I can't show you guys the postcode error, which I was really hoping to be able to do because it's not giving me an error again. But I wanted to at least give you guys some food for thought that, basic troubleshooting Reseating RAM wouldn't have fixed the problem. Reseating graphics card wouldn't have fixed the problem. It really came down to CPU tension. And all I did literally, I just did this. Loose, 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 and then this one wasn't. That's all I did. I did that. Still doesn't wiggle or anything. It brought tension off the socket, and everything worked fine. So I'm gonna do another post. Code 55 had went away, and then both my RAM sticks started working. So you could see how you would inadvertently go, oh man, my RAM is bad, and you buy more RAM, and then you have the same problem. Or you go, dang, my CPU or my motherboard, or you might even think it's a bad motherboard channel or something. Would like to have demonstrated that one a little bit more for you, but I love to make these educational pieces where I can to give you guys some food for thought on your systems. If you're watching this video right now and it piqued your interest because you went, man, I have a computer that's being super unstable and I don't know what the problem is, I would maybe not just give your RAM a good reseat, maybe double check your installation on your cooler to make sure you're not over tightened. All right guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.